Now, on Enough Said, with KFAN Radio's Dan Barrero.
Because the word was out that the new board might be headed in a different direction.
When there's no respect between students and anybody, mediation's impossible, right? I think
Enough Said.
Call your representative up. Call these Republicans up on the phone and tell them we want to vote.
But we're not giving up. We're not giving in. We will continue to work.
We are not going to allow stunts like this to stop us from carrying out the people's business.
Enough Said returns for another very controversial week. My name's Dan Barrero. Justin Gard is at my left. And Lori Fisher, kind enough to return after that extended absence.
Okay,
Welcome
one week. My pleasure to be back. A lot of people bucking the system. You have the protests that lasted more than 25 hours on the House floor with lawmakers demanding a vote on gun control. And now the UK votes to leave the European Union. Other countries considering it as well. Dan, go for it.
Well, I'll leave. You consider yourself a great Brexit mind? Because I don't think I am.
But maybe better than some of the people that actually voted to leave,
Possible.
which we're finding out.
Well, I will say this. I'm not ready to believe that it's the end of the world, that this vote took place, although the stock market would seem to suggest that they believe that it is. But I think all these stories that Lori laid out are indicative of this stuff gets messy and it gets emotional, and we continually now, I think, are finding ourselves getting surprised predictions, well, this can't happen, and then it happens. Here, obviously, with Trump even emerging to the degree that he did.
He loves Brexit, by the way. You're shocked to find out.
That's very true.
He loves it.
And we'll get to a little more Trump later. Even the gun control part as well. I will say this on the gun part, because I do have some strong opinions, and we covered some of this last week, but we'll try to extend it out a little bit. I was not that impressed with what the Democrats did. And the reason is, well, I'll put it this way. I think that the irony here is that Dick Cheney Republicans should have loved what they are doing and what they are willing to give up, I think, in terms of due process regarding the list. And old-style Democrats should actually be offended by it. So we got the world turned upside down. And for the rest of us, who I think try to be a little bit consistent about this stuff, I want to see some resolution, but I also want to see some reasonableness here. And what the Democrats are asking, basically, in terms of power being handed over to the Attorney General, I'm nervous by. And I'm as anti-terrorist as anybody out there. So I guess I'm confused by why the Republicans should be delighted with the Democrats, the Dick Cheney ones, and the old-style Democrats who are suspicious about how much power we give anybody. This thing has gotten reversed.
Aren't they congratulating themselves a little bit too much, by the way, for the sit-in and for everything?
I think so.
That's kind of, the sit-in, you can do it, whatever you want to do, that's fine. They're trying to make a point. They're obviously trying to continue a conversation, but they almost act like, well, we didn't get anything really done. But, man, we started this conversation, and now people are talking about it. One of us got retweeted by Kim Kardashian. Did you see that? We're really in the mix now. But nothing happened. Like, this is not the important part, the demonstration and the show of solidarity and all of that. And I feel like they're congratulating themselves a little bit on that whole scene when what really came out of it at the end of it, right?
Very little. And the Republicans, I mean, I will say on the Senate side at least, the Republicans did put up some of their own proposals. And on the House side, there's been nothing to even be allowed to vote on. So I don't have a lot of sympathy for them either. And I don't know where the middle ground is. I just know that when we're starting to get to that demagoguery thing, when Elizabeth Warren is agreeing with one of her colleagues who's saying, well, basically the Republicans have voted to sell guns to ISIS. Now, that sounds like Dick Cheney to me. It does. And we used to, some of us, and certainly Democrats in the group, that were despising that kind of thing, when there's a lot more fine print to it. I'm more concerned about who's on the list, I think, than you are, and that some people are.
It's such a small percentage. That's what bugs me. It's 400,000 people out of 300 million.
We have to move on, guys.
It's not a huge inconvenience for me, but we have to move on.
We do. Enough said on that one. St. Paul School District pays out a lot of money to get rid of the superintendent, Valeria Silva. Under the separation agreement, she gets nearly $800,000 in benefits and salary, and she will also help for the next 15 months for the transition. Justin.
This is why people go crazy about school boards, right? Or when they go crazy about people in power being at the top and people that are in charge of those people. Sure. I don't blame people for being upset. This, on its face, looks awful. There's no positive spin you can put on this if you're the St. Paul schools, right? You extend her contract 3 years, something like that.
Yes, exactly.
And then less than a
year
year
ago.
in, exactly, about a year in, you say, man, we've got some problems, and maybe you're not the person for the job. I don't blame people who say, where are my tax dollars going on this thing? It's a bad look.
Well, you know what might help them?
What's that?
Maybe they can go to the Minneapolis school model about the process, which took, 16 months.
Is that done?
Several stops and starts. One guy that we loved, and then we found out we didn't really do our due diligence on him. You're right. I mean, I go with the sort of the Norwood Teague, Richard Pitino analogy here, because shortly before, what was it? Literally the day that
Norwood resigned.
Teague resigned or was going to be fired, that's the day Pitino signed the extension that gave this huge buyout, made that huge change.
Yep.
And it's almost like the school board did the same thing, because the word was out that the new board might be headed in a different direction on her. And so they said, you know what we'll do? We don't care. We're going to lock her in before we're ousted.
Make it tough.
And make it tough. And so now that's what people are left with. I don't know if she should stay in the job.
I don't either.
Do you? We
no,
can't possibly
but the
know.
discipline thing I do think is a big issue for the
Absolutely.
St. Paul schools, and I think she's messed that up in reading about it. We've talked about the St. Paul
question.
schools, what's going on, and the mediation as opposed to suspension. And when there's no respect between students and anybody, mediation's impossible, right? I think you and I will agree on that. So I know that was one of the issues. But no, I don't know the inner workings of the St. Paul schools, but you're right. They did almost a bait and switch and said, yep, we're leaving, but here you go. Here's your person.
Some of this may be, some of the quotes I've seen from people on the board, I think they're totally unrealistic about how much the person at the top of this enormous food chain can really do anyway.
That's true.
I think that we start talking in terms of platitudes and pleasing this constituency and this group, and in the end, how much can they really do? I mean, I don't know, because we've got so many, I think we find that in Minneapolis as well, we've got so many issues and so many problems.
Here's the other frustrating part. If you have a kid in that school or you're just a part of those St. Paul schools, she has been looking for other jobs as well. So was she truly invested those last couple of years? I mean, you just throw that into the mix and say, we're paying her this much money to leave, when she had already thought of the idea. She'd applied for a couple of jobs in Florida, I think. She was ready to roll. She was ready to get out of there.
Okay, we need to roll to the next topic.
Good.
Let's talk about social media. It can be useful to communicate. You guys do it for your show. You guys have thousands and thousands of Twitter followers. But terror groups like ISIS use it to recruit and plan attacks. Our own Tom Leiden talked to U.S. Attorney Andrew Luger this week about the recent high-profile ISIS trial here in Minnesota. Take a listen.
And why are they targeting Minnesota?
So my opinion is this. They saw the success that al-Shabaab had here. So why not duplicate it? And given the high production value and given the money and their ability through social media to connect with people, why not pick it up and enhance it? And that's what we saw in this trial.
So Dan, why don't you talk about the balancing act when it comes to social media and terror groups?
I don't know.
With the First Amendment.
Well, it's an important subject, and it's a huge one. And I just, Star Tribune had an editorial about this too, and it said all the right things, like this is important and serious, and we're learning the degree to which these groups are using the social media outlets that are available to the Kardashians as well, but they have very different ideas in mind.
Different sides.
One would think. And so that sounds good, and I read and I go, yeah, we should try to figure out what the balance is. But what the hell is it? I mean, what are you going to do with that? We've got that little thing called the First Amendment, and it's not absolute. I understand that. You can't, there's certain threats that to violence you're not allowed to make, etc. But I don't know. I think we're finding out on a lot of stuff that the bad guys in this case are going to use the stuff that makes us unique against us as often as they can. And so you can say, well, we're going to shut down, because I think Twitter has done some of this where they're shutting down certain Twitter accounts.
Yeah, Twitter and Facebook have done that stuff.
Correct.
Yep.
But how wide is that? There are going to be 100 ways around that, especially on the internet, whether it's Twitter or Facebook or Insta or whatever the case may be. Is that the latest
That's
one?
what the kids call it. Yeah, the kids call it Insta or Snap.
So what do we do?
I don't know.
I don't think there's anywhere to go. It sounds good to say, let's have these meetings and let's talk it out, but where do we actually get any kind of resolution based on the Constitution?
And those are the social networks that we know about.
That's true.
And you and I know Twitter fairly well, Facebook kind of, Insta, no shot, Snapchat, no shot. And the terrorists are ahead of us on all of this stuff when it comes to, would you even know if I gave you a laptop or something how to get to the dark net?
No.
Where some of these...
You obviously do.
I have no idea. Lori might know. Brett definitely knows.
That's possible.
But I don't understand the dark net and how you start doing, using that and finding what they're doing there and what they use it for. That's tricky for me, who has no idea about that, to understand. But they know that world very well, it seems like.
Well, and as I said, as we've been talking about this is even from the first segment, none of this stuff is
clean.
Easy,
Nothing's clean.
Which is not the same thing that you shouldn't try to resolve things. Whether we're talking about the House of Representatives, on that I still think they should never have left. It's the old put them in a locked room and get a solution. But in this situation, even if you create that locked room scenario, I'm not sure what you come up with. That's not going to make a lot of us nervous about, as much as we're concerned about terror, about who's going to be the arbiter of what's
coming up on Enough Said.
I saw a headline somewhere in front of me here. The Veronica Mars movie Kickstarter account raised more money during that same period than Donald Trump. Now, here's the question.
With Corey, I'm really proud of him. He did a great job, but we're going to go a little bit of a different route.
It's been so amazing, and I wouldn't change 1 second of my time with Mr. Trump other than to say thank you. And it's been a great privilege and an honor. So.
Welcome back to Enough Said. A lot of developments this week with Donald Trump's campaign. He fired his campaign manager, who, by the way, is going to CNN. And then the fundraising reports came out. In June, he has a little more than $1 million in the bank compared to Clinton's $42 million. Take it away, Dan.
Well, in fact, I think I saw a headline somewhere in front of me here. The Veronica Mars movie Kickstarter account raised more money during that same period than Donald Trump. Now, here's the question. Are we laughing needlessly? Because, Trump didn't have to spend any money to win the nomination. Now, I'm in the group that says this is a whole different animal.
It is.
And it is going to affect him. And I'm not sure the switch firing Lewandowski is going to have any kind of meaningful impact on. It's the old deal of Trump's whole thing was, well, I don't need handlers. I do this myself. Well, he actually does need some handlers. But it's almost like, was it Lewandowski's fault that he has basically allowed Hillary Clinton to get her mojo? As we talked about regarding a couple of her speeches.
Yep.
Hillary Clinton is not a good campaigner. I don't think she had really all that much momentum, other than she was ahead, obviously. And yet, because of how badly Trump handled a number of issues, she finally got her groove going, you could say. And is someone else going to get to Donald and say, Donald, you have to go this route rather than that route now that we're doing this alleged pivot? I don't think anything.
No, it would be hard to think somebody could get to him to actually make him believe that. Yeah. When you mentioned the money part, I mean, Jeb raised more money than him, Rubio raised more money than him, Cruz raised more money than him, and what did it matter?
And they were all defeated.
Big time. And we're talking about 2-3 times as much money that they spent in the Republican part of it. I'm most disappointed that we're not going to get the dirt. It appears that Lewandowski is taking not only the high road, he's going above and beyond the high road. It's the highest road possible. The money, though, is staggering. That was, for someone that doesn't follow the money all the time,
right.
It was staggering to see just how much Clinton has right now compared to Donald Trump, because now it is like 4 times as much if you do the math, and he's his own campaigner. He's his own commercial all the time, so maybe he doesn't need it the same way, but that's a lot to overcome.
Some people are linking the Brexit result to the Trump story and saying this is another cautionary tale that should remind people that Trump cannot be dismissed as still being capable of winning. And I think there's some truth to that, but I still think there's a huge disconnect in that, again, the voters we've talked about before who may or may not be on the fence, I just don't think he's come close to winning any of those folks
Probably
over.
not.
And there are still people who still say, but there's still time. Are our memories that short that we're going to forget all the BS that he has said and done, and all the signs he's given to many of us, at least, that he is not fit for this office? Even if I'm in the group that says we need somebody who's a maverick, a little bit out of the box, this ain't the guy.
Okay, let's move on. New limits on DWI laws. The Supreme Court has ruled that police have to get a search warrant before administering a blood alcohol test. They won't. That doesn't include breath tests because the court says those are less intrusive. So no blood tests without a search warrant. Dan.
This would be a good Rosenbaum one.
It would be. He would like it. Yeah.
He'd love this one. I tend to think this was the right ruling. You sort of split the deal where
you got to have something.
You got to have something,
Yep.
and you still have the breathalyzer, which is, I think, relatively accurate. But the blood test is more intrusive, and the notion that, well, it's hard to get a judge to get the kind of warrant we need to get the blood. I'm not sure I buy that. The U.S. Supreme Court didn't. The Minnesota Supreme Court obviously did. So to me, this is a fair, sort of a middle ground where you still have some protection in place, and yet you still want to kind of create this barrier where you say, well, no, this goes over a line, and here's where we do want to have some overview.
It helps drunken driving for sure, but what about this new era that we're in? You know, the marijuana era, I believe it was called on our radio show. That's the one.
Joe Friedberg brought that up.
He did. That's the one area where this, I think, where people can say, well, is this really going to be enough? Because there are different kinds of impaired driving, correct? You know, depending on what kind of drugs you're using.
I don't know why you're looking at me.
So the breath tests are absolutely fair. And I agree with you on the warrant thing. If you really want to go the blood test route and you want to get the warrant, it does seem, I've read enough people that have said,
you can get it.
You can find a judge somewhere. You'll find a magistrate somewhere. It might
wake them up. He might be bitter at 2:30
but that's their job.
But that's what they're paid
That's
to
what
do.
they're supposed to do.
Exactly
and so I think it is easy enough if you want to go that extra step. But keeping the breath test is a no-brainer.
This doesn't eliminate it. It just says you're going to have to follow a procedure, and we're making it. We don't want to make it so easy that you can indiscriminately throw this thing out. And I don't know whether some of the groups like MAD where they are on this. My assumption is they wanted both. They preferred both. But what I read from a couple comments was, as long as the court upheld that you're in trouble if you say no to the breathalyzer. In of itself, you just refuse the breathalyzer, that for a lot of them that was enough, and for me that's enough.
It is, yeah, and I think the divide is the right divide, because there obviously has to be something. Some people will say that's a little bit too intrusive, to go ahead and put the needle in.
Coming up on Enough Said.
You know how I think. I like things clean and I like things simple. I was on the Buddy Hield bandwagon. I was the Buddy bandwagon guy. He was there, but done. I was.
The Minnesota Timberwolves select Chris Dunn from Providence College.
Welcome back to Enough Said. It is now official. NBA draft is in the books. And once again, Guardsy, the experts rather embarrassed, because what do we tell people on the radio?
There's no chance Chris Dunn is available at pick 5. It's a nice thought, but he's not going to be there.
Too highly regarded, and what happened? The Celtics probably shocked some people didn't make a trade. And whoever was picking at 4, I don't even remember who it was. Phoenix.
They picked Bender.
And that meant Chris Dunn fell into the laps of the Wolves. And this whole organization got a little bit more interesting. Everybody loves Chris Dunn, I think, as a very good two-way player.
Tough kid.
Is a kind of tailor-made, one could say, for Tibbs, the new coach, right? But he plays the same position Ricky Rubio does.
Ricky Rubio.
And this is where it gets intriguing, because there are some reports that the Wolves shopped Rubio to a certain extent. And so a lot of people are saying something's got to give. I actually like this playing out as maybe he stays, maybe he doesn't, if you get a good offer. But if you don't, I say keep them both this season. Let it play out a little bit. Let the kid learn under Rubio a little bit. If he's, turns out to be Magic Johnson in his first year, then,
the decision's
maybe
made.
Make a decision. But I don't think it should be automatic that you got to get rid of Rubio here. I wanted best player available. And by all accounts, based on the number of teams that tried to get Chris Dunn from them, at that spot, they got the best player available.
The bidding war went crazy, we're told, once the Timberwolves picked him number 5. You know how I think. I like things clean and I like things simple. I was on the Buddy Hield bandwagon. I was the Buddy bandwagon guy. He was there, but Dunn, I like Dunn better. But I'd already said Dunn's not going to be there. I'd already moved on. Flip used to make fun of me for this because I don't like to have choices. I worry when we have choices. And I had gone to
sleep.
It's
a new country club. You don't have to worry anymore.
I guess I don't, but I had gone to sleep the night before, basically, saying it's going to be Buddy Hield because Chris Dunn's not going to be there, and they like Buddy more than they like Jamal Murray. So there. The decision is made. I don't have to worry about Rubio. I don't have to worry about Jimmy Butler.
It's cleaner.
Everything is clean.
Cleaner.
And as I'm driving home last night after the radio show, you hear what Boston's doing, and they may have lost their mind with all of their first-round picks and squandered all the equity they had.
They kept all 8 of their picks. That's a whole roster.
I know.
It's not even feasible.
And nobody's excited about any of those guys. But Dunn is a good pick. I'm happy to have Dunn, but now the ripple effect is driving my world.
Seal of approval from both of us.
Yes,
Enough said. Let's go to the lightning round. Let's start serious, and then we'll have some fun. Let's start out with the police driver in the Freddie Gray case found not guilty of all charges in the death of the 25-year-old. Prosecutors had said the officer was criminally negligent because he didn't buckle Gray into a seatbelt. Dan.
Well, it looks to me like the big problem here, and a lot of legal people had mentioned it a long time ago, was that the prosecutor moved too fast and overcharged. And in fact, I think it was literally, we got our investigative report in on a Thursday, and the next morning, she's filing charges. And a lot of people said, I know there's a lot of public pressure, but you got to slow this down. And so it may well be that nobody's held accountable when this was supposed to be a homicide, which makes no sense. But we're back to whether there was too much overcharging that made it more difficult for a judge, fairly highly regarded judge, I think in this case, to rule that that the individual, the driver, was guilty.
And there's no evidence in the van, basically, besides that he wasn't buckled, and obviously it's the driver's word over someone who's not here anymore. You're right, the overcharge thing, but I understand the frustration on this one.
Next up.
There's nothing there.
Next up, Wells Fargo. It has 30 days to remove illuminated signs on the rooftop across from the U.S. Bank Stadium. The Vikings winning that lawsuit. Justin.
You sure you want this one?
Well, why?
Awfully controversial.
The Vikings win everything. Why wouldn't they win this one? I mean, what the Vikings...
Bagley wins again.
Bagley wins again. His record is
undefeated.
sterling. He's incredible. Now, some things take longer. The stadium took longer than he probably would have liked to, but this was the way it was always going to go. They had a written agreement. I don't have to be Ron Rosenbaum to know they had a written agreement in place on what they could do there, what they couldn't do there.
And they pushed the envelope.
They pushed it, which I would too probably if I'm Wells Fargo, but this was pretty clean.
Is this all about like 2 feet or 1 foot in terms of how far
I
the
thought it was
sign's
like 12
extended?
or 16 inches,
It's
something like
unbelievable.
that. But that apparently makes a big deal in the sky. It was enough to go to court over it.
The Lynx are a big deal. They're getting some love from the White House on Monday. They get to go see President Obama for the 3rd time since they're the WNBA champions. Dan.
Well,
they've got a room there,
We're
I
going to have
think.
Tibbs on the radio, and I'm going to challenge him to say, man, you got a lot of pressure on you. You got a team that is a defending champion that is off to a historic start once again, with every reason to believe that they could finally do what they haven't done before, which is win back-to-back titles. It's, I tell people on the radio, this is a team of stars.
Yep.
It's a team that's cohesive.
A likable group.
It's a team that's extremely well coached. And I think as this keeps going, I think it is going to build some steam.
Okay, we have to move fast. Cleveland still celebrating the Cavaliers winning the NBA Finals, and they couldn't have done it without their superhero, LeBron James. Justin.
I think sometimes we let him off the hook too easily. I'm worried about that. And
you'll never give him proper credit.
No, but I worry
Honestly.
that they could have lost that series and we wouldn't have said anything about LeBron. But there's no arguing. That was one of the best finals performances in my lifetime. I assume in your lifetime as well.
No question.
41 points back-to-back, triple-double in Game 7, changing the entire series.
The block that will be mentioned as one of the top 10
Incredible.
And last up, I want you guys to see this. J.R. Smith with the Cavaliers can't seem to keep his shirt on.
Of course, Lori wants to get to the shirtless
Take a
guy.
look. Shirtless at the airport, shirtless at the parade, shirtless selfies. Should we be offended by this? I mean, he definitely can rock the look.
I'll ask. Well,
I mean, actually, Lori probably be better qualified to answer this. I don't know.
She made sure we got it in the show
She got
today.
it in the show. By the way, he did finally wear a shirt. If you are bothered by it, he did finally put a shirt on. I thought it was funny but it's J.R. Smith.
It
so
is.
You come to expect that's how J.R. Smith rolls.
It's a simple answer. It's a question to answer. If you looked like J.R. Smith with a shirt off, would you ever wear a shirt? I probably wouldn't.
I'm not going to do it. You're probably not.
I'm an
gonna do it.
exhibitionist.
Yeah.
Well, no, me in my current state, no. If I look like J.R. Smith next week, I'm not wearing a shirt on
with
this
or without
show.
the tattoos.
I don't think I could do the tattoos very well, but I'm